It is UFC 323 fight week. Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan 2, as well as Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van. This is a sick card, top to bottom. It is stacked. There's two title fights, of course, in the main and co-main event. There's a lot of great fights on the undercard, and I won't waste any more time. I'll get right into it. Starting with, of course, the early prelim opener, Muhammad Naimov versus Myron Santos. So I'm gonna go with Myron Santos. And of all the fights on this card, actually no, there's a couple other fights that I was really up in the air on, but this is one of the fights on the card that I was most torn on. I had a tough time picking this one because both these guys are kind of a weird case. You know, Muhammad Naimov, he had that win over Nathaniel Wood, albeit there was a lot of controversy in that fight. It was still a win over one of the top featherweight prospects in the world right now. So that was an impressive win. That's aged really well. And then since then, he hasn't looked all that good. His last couple of fights, he's been pretty iffy. And then Myron Santos, you know, he had that win over Francis Marshall, which I thought, watching that live, I thought he lost that fight. But he's since bounced back and got a win over Sadiq Youssef. So it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Both these guys are a little inconsistent. But I'm going to go with the guy who I could trust more recently, and that's Myron Santos. Another factor in this fight is that both of these guys have a win over Con Offley. But Myron Santos, he KO'd him in the tough finale in very impressive fashion. Muhammad Naimov took him to a decision, which he's been doing a lot lately. I know a lot of his fights are won by decision, but lately it's been a little bit more lackluster than before. So I'm gonna go with Myron Santos. He also Muhammad Naimov, that is. He also has a loss to Felipe Lima, which I don't think has aged terribly well, especially getting submitted by him. So it's a weird one. Muhammad Naimov, he's had moments in his career where he's looked really good, other moments where he's looked not so good. So I'm going to go with the guy that I can trust more recently, and that is Myron Santos. We'll move on to the second fight on the card. Mansour Abdulmalik versus Antonio Tricoli. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this fight. This is a guy who has 7 of his 8 wins are by knockout, and they're usually early knockout, versus Antonio Tricoli, who is a human punching bag. Antonio Tricoli is going to get knocked out early. There's not much to talk about in this one. I am very, very confident that Mansour Abdulmalik gets this one done. Round 1 KO, easy. Antonio Tricoli, I know, people will say, oh, he went 3 rounds with Sharon Magomedov. He only got finished in round 3, so why would he get finished early by a guy who's probably not as good as Sharon? But he was a punching bag in that fight, and if Sharon Magomedov had any power in his hands, he would have put him out in the first round. I mean, he was just there to take punishment. It was a very poor performance. I know it was on short notice, and I know he was flying to Abu Dhabi for that fight, but still, I mean, he showed zero fight. And Mansour Abdulmalik, if he comes across someone who fights in that manner where they're very timid, very scared to throw, and they'll just accept punishment, he's going to punish them for it. I think it's going to look a lot like Ateba Gutierrez versus his last few opponents. So give me Mansour Abdulmalik, round 1 KO in this fight. We'll move on. Up the card, another fight that I think is going to end in round 1 KO. Iwo Baranushki versus Ibo Aslan. Now, Baranushki, he had a really, really good Dana White Contender Series performance earlier this year. He got a round 1 knockout over a guy he was I don't want to say he was a big underdog, but I think he was close to a 2-1 underdog against. It was a guy who was a huge light heavyweight. I'm talking giant. And he went out there. He knocked him out in round 1. It was a guy who's really good jiu-jitsu guy. He's got decent stand-up as well. He's got some knockout power. His name was Muhammad Ali, not the Muhammad Ali you're thinking of. RIP to him. It was a different Muhammad Ali, and he disgraced the Muhammad Ali name. He got slept in bad in round 1 by Ivo Baranushki. And Ibo Aslan, he came into the UFC. He was looking pretty hot to start his career. He got that win over Rafael Caquera, which we know now is meaningless. Rafael Caquera is a victim. And since then, I mean, he had that fight with Billy Elicana where he just kind of sparred with him. He accepted a loss. That was a really, really poor performance. I think that mystique about Ibo Aslan early in his career, that, he's this knockout artist, he's this big, powerful bruiser, I think that's kind of gone. That's kind of sapped up. So I'm going to go with Iro Baranushki, getting this one done by round 1 KO. I think he's going to pose a lot of problems for Ibo Aslan on the feet, who we've since found out is not that good. And I think he's going to show differences in the power. I think he's going to get it done in round 1. And, first win on the card for Poland, I think. Moving on, up the card, Edson Barboza versus Jalen Turner. This is a sick fight. Not a sick fight if you're an Edson Barboza fan, I think. I think he's going to lose, unfortunately. I think Jalen Turner's got this one. I think he's going to have a huge size advantage. He's going to have not a big reach advantage, but he's going to be a hell of a lot taller than him. He's going to be hard for Edson Barboza to hit. Of course, those those signature high kicks from Edson Barboza. He's going to have a tough time landing on an opponent that's 6'3". That's going to be really tricky for him. And Edson Barboza at this stage in his career, I mean, it's not that good. I hate to say it. I love Edson Barboza. He's a fan favorite. He's an all-time great in the lightweight division. He had a decent run at featherweight as well, but he's finished. It's over. It's well and truly over. I hate to say it. His last fight against Drakkar Klose, I thought he was going to go out there and win that fight. He ended up losing pretty clearly. He even got hurt a couple of times in that fight. And I think if Drakkar Klose is finding the chin and hurting you, I think Jalen Turner, who's got great power and he's got the great ability to just snipe someone, I think with his long arms, I think he's going to get it done. I think he's going to get it done by round 2 or 3 TKO. I think that layoff after the temporary retirement from Jalen Turner might cause him to, have a little bit of a longer feeling out process, might warm up into the fight a little bit slower. But I think once he finds his range, I think he's going to land that shot on Edson Barboza, and I think he's going to put him out. I also think this is good for Jalen Turner matchup-wise because he doesn't have to worry about the takedown. A lot of times in his career, he's been a little hesitant on his feet because he is worried about the takedown. So, Gamrot, he lost that fight very narrowly because of the takedown and getting controlled on the ground. That's how he ended up losing to Renato Moicano. He got taken down. He got mounted on. Renato Moicano got the mount from back position and was just beating the shit out of him and got the TKO finish. So Jalen Turner's not going to have to worry about the grappling all in this one. I think once he warms up into this fight, he's going to start finding his range. I think he's going to light up Edson Barboza and get a round 2 or 3 TKO. We'll move on. Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira. This fight, this is a definition of unstoppable force versus immovable object. And I'm not talking about skill. I'm talking about Marvin Vettori's chin versus Bruno Ferreira's vicious KO power. This is going to be a true test to see how good Marvin Vettori's chin truly is. I'm excited to see if it'll hold up in this fight. And honestly, I think it will. I think he's just got an absurd ability to take punishment that not many other guys have. Even in 5-round fights against really, really dangerous opponents, he was able to make it all 5 rounds. And that's he's become punching bags in a lot of his fights. I mean, Marvin Vettori is very simple to figure out on the feet. He doesn't have a very dynamic striking arsenal. It's just kind of a 1-2, and that's it. I think Bruno Ferreira, he's a lot more versatile. He's a lot more dynamic. He obviously has the grappling threat. He's a very good submission artist, and he's got devastating power. And I think he's going to be on the front foot for most of this fight. I think he's going to be putting the pressure on Vettori. I think he's going to be landing the more damaging shots. And I think Vettori's chin will hold up. I'm going to say he survives to a decision, but I think Bruno Ferreira wins a pretty clear 30-27 decision. I think he may rock him in a few moments, may have him stumbling around, but Vettori will recover. Maybe Bruno Ferreira will have a moment where he could get a finish, and he'll fumble it by going for his spinning back elbow that he loves trying. It's only worked once against Dustin Stoltzfus. Okay. He's not going to find that shot on Marvin Vettori. Maybe I'll eat my words. Maybe he'll spinning elbow KO Marvin Vettori in spectacular fashion, but I don't think so. I think Vettori will survive to a decision, but Bruno Ferreira will win this fight pretty clearly, is my opinion. We'll move on to the prelims, and kicking that off, we have Nazim Sadykhov versus Fares Ziam. This is a sick fight, and like I mentioned earlier, there's a few fights on this card where I was really torn on. This is one of those, Nazim Sadykhov versus Fares Ziam. I'm having a really tough time with this one. I think Sadykhov has the advantage on the feet. I think he's a very good boxer. I think outside of the rankings, he's one of the better strikers. And Fares Ziam, he's very good too. He's very dynamic. He's got great grappling. He's got great scrambles. We saw that Mike Davis fight. He was put in some very bad positions, but he was able to survive and work out of them. But I don't think this fight's going to be on the ground very much. I think Sadykhov is going to be able to keep it standing. I don't think Fares Ziam's offensive grappling is all that great. And I think if that's the case, I think Sadykhov's going to win this one by a very, very close decision. He's got very powerful hands. We saw that against Nicolas Mata. He's got the ability to really show damage on his opponents. He got the doctor stoppage against Evan Elder, got the doctor stoppage finish against Ismail Bonfim. So he's got very powerful hands, and he's able to open up a lot of damage on his opponents, and I think that damage is going to show more on Fares Ziam, and I think that might just be the difference in this fight. Fares Ziam's very good. He's very rangy. He's very dynamic. He uses his legs well, good kicks, good knees. He's got good striking as well. He's very well-rounded, and I think he's good, but I don't think he's got strong enough grappling to spend enough time in this fight on the ground where he's able to manipulate Sadykhov. I think if this fight stays standing enough, I think Sadykhov's going to get it done in very close fashion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Fares Ziam ekes out a close decision. It's very possible. But yeah, I'm going with Sadiqov in this fight. Now, if I'm always picking against Fares Siam, I don't know why. I picked against him against what's his name, Mike Davis. I picked against him. I want to say I picked against him against Matt Frevola as well, which was a horrible decision in hindsight. Now this was not on YouTube. I just started making videos a couple months ago, but I would go through each card and make my predictions in my notes app and stuff. And I always pick against Fares Siam, and he always proves me wrong. So maybe this is another one of those cases, but I'm gonna go with Nazim Sadiqov here, getting this one done close decision. Moving on, Macy Barber versus Karine Silva. Not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Macy Barber is going to get it done, I think. I think she's too well-rounded for Karine Silva, who's kind of just relies on her grappling. She's not very, she's not as good as Macy Barber on the feet, I don't think. And I don't think Macy Barber's takedown defense is all that bad, so I think she'll be able to keep this one standing. 29-28, Macy Barber, women's MMA, typical fashion. We'll move on. Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan. I'm going to go with Chris Duncan winning this fight. I've seen a lot of people picking the underdog in Terrence McKinney, but I have a hard time going with him here. I know he has the finishing potential. I know how dangerous he is, and I worry about that a little bit. I think round one might get a little hairy for Chris Duncan, but we've seen how durable Chris Duncan is in his career. There's been a lot of fights where he's been hurt, and he's rallied back and gotten finishes. You look at his fight with Charlie Campbell on the Contender Series. He got hurt really bad early in that fight. And then as Charlie Campbell was going in for a finish, boom, Chris Duncan cracks him, puts him away. He had a war with Mateusz Rebecki where he withstanded a lot of damage, and he went on to win that fight by a pretty clear decision. So Chris Duncan's durable, and he finds ways to win fights consistently. This is what he does. And Terrence McKinney, he just doesn't have a chin that I can trust. He's too finishable. I think he's going to have some success early. I think he's going to be quicker. I think he's going to be a lot faster than Chris Duncan. I think he's going to be beating him to the punch. But ultimately, I think Terrence McKinney, I think he's gonna win round one, but then in round two, I think Chris Duncan's gonna start taking over. I think he's gonna start to get on the pressure in this fight. I think he's gonna find a finish over Terrence McKinney. Not a vicious KO, but I think he'll get like a TKO against the fence where Terrence McKinney goes down. And I got Chris Duncan winning this one, round two KO. He's also got a really nasty guillotine, also something to mention. So who knows if Terrence McKinney tries to go to the grappling like he did in his last fight. There's a chance that Chris Duncan punishes him with that and gets a submission of his own. So I like Chris Duncan in this one. I trust his durability a lot more than Terrence McKinney. I think he'll be able to weather that storm and go on to get a finish and get the win. Moving on to the prelim headliner, Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. I'm going to go with Grant Dawson in this one. I think Manuel Torres, he's good. He is a physical specimen, a lightweight. He's got a ton of finishing potential. I think he's a good fighter. But he's not the most technically sound. I know this is a different style matchup, but you look back to that Ignacio Bahamondes fight. He kept running into the same punch over and over, and he ended up getting KO'd because of it. I mean, he's not the most technically sound fighter, and I think Grant Dawson's going to punish someone who's really wild like that. I think if Manuel Torres starts swinging big shots, Grant Dawson's going to get under those shots, shoot for the hips, and once he gets you to the ground, I mean, he is dominant there. He's dominated much better grapplers than Manuel Torres. He dominated Joe Selecki. He dominated He dominated Damir Ismagulov. He got a big win over another Ismagulov. And it was in dominant fashion. He's got really good grappling. He does a really good job at tying up the legs like Khabib did, where he'd get that triangle sort of around the legs and just keep you from going anywhere. He does a really good job at doing that. And I think once he inevitably gets his fight down to the ground, I think he's going to work Manuel Torres down there. Could get a submission win, but I think he's going to win a decision off of control time. I think he's going to kind of just lay on him for 3 rounds. I really think that's how this fight's going to go. I do worry about Grant Dawson's chin a little bit. Obviously, if you're getting KO'd by a straight shot from Bobby Green, in the first punch he lands, that's never a good sign. I think it might have been a jab, too. It's kind of a weird one where he's like switching stances and threw a right hand out there and caught Grant Dawson on the chin. But if you're getting sat down and KO'd by that, that is very troubling. But I don't think Manuel Torres has, I think he's a bit too much of a brawler. I think he's a bit too much. He's too reliant on his physicality and his athleticism. And I think Grant Dawson's going to weather that storm. I think he's going to get under those big wild shots, get a takedown. I think he's going to dominate him on the ground to a 30-27 decision, Grant Dawson. I'll move on up to the main card, Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. I'm going with Jan Blachowicz. I'm going with the old man to get this one done. Now, I saw Bogdan Guskov showed up to the press conference wearing that Agent 47 costume, and that was sick. He looked like Usyk when he had that second fight with Fury. So that was scary for someone who's picking Jan Blachowicz. However, I'm not picking someone based off of the costume they show up to at the press conference. I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz getting this one done. I think maybe he can get a late TKO, but I think it's more likely that he gets a decision. This is a guy he had a razor close fight with Alex Pereira. It went to a split decision that he arguably could have won. He very clearly won round 1. And, he was a strike or 2 away from winning rounds 2 or round 3, either one of those. So that was really impressive. I also thought he beat Carlos Ulberg. I thought he won that fight, and I didn't think it was very close. It was close, but I don't think it was much of a question in my mind. It wasn't as close as the Pereira versus Blachowicz fight. I thought Blachowicz very clearly beat Carlos Ulberg. I thought he won 2 of those 3 rounds. I think he was landing the more effective shots. And I think if you can make it close with those 2 guys, he also had the draw with Magomed Ankalaev before that. I mean, he's having very, very close decisions with top caliber light heavyweights. And I think Guskov's good. I think he's very dangerous. He's got a lot of power in his hands, but I don't think he's quite at that level of Magomed Ankalaev and Carlos Ulberg and Alex Pereira. I just don't think he is. I don't think Blachowicz is going to get caught rushing in. Guskov in his last fight against Nikita Krylov, he liked to keep his hands down, bounce around to the outside, and bait Krylov into running in and then he found the knockout shot, which is the same way that Reyes chinned Krylov. So I don't think Blachowicz is going to fall victim to that. I don't think he's going to rush in. I don't think he's going to get impatient. I think he's going to chip away at that lead leg. It's going to take away how light Bogdan Guskov is on his feet. He's going to be bouncing around a whole lot less. It's going to limit his movement. I think that'll add up as the fight goes on, and I think Blachowicz will take over. I think maybe Guskov has some moments of success in round 1. Maybe he picks up the round 1, but I think as this fight goes on, I think Blachowicz is going to have a lot of success with those low kicks. I think he's going to be finding his shots. He's also very powerful himself, so that maybe there's a chance that Bogdan Guskov gets put out in this fight. So I think Blachowicz has the tools to get this one done. He also has not terrible grappling, offensively at least. His defensive grappling isn't great, but I don't think Guskov's going to try and take this down to the ground. So who knows? I think Blachowicz is he's more experienced. I think he's more dynamic on the feet. And I think he's good at avoiding big power shots. He got knocked out early in his career by Thiago Santos, but I think he's learned a lot since then. And he's a veteran at this stage in the game. I mean, he has a lot of fights. He has 41 fights in his career, and I think that experience will show here. I think he's going to win a close decision or maybe a late finish over Bogdan Guskov. He's also a guy that I don't see getting worse with age. He's kind of like Glover Teixeira, where it's like, yeah, he's old, but I don't see him really having a tremendous fall off with that age. I think he's going to continue to fight at a high level for a while. And he's in his 40s now. I think he's going to maintain that into his mid 40s. I think he'll be a top 5 to 10 light heavyweight, and I think he's going to turn away Bogdan Guskov in this fight. So we'll move on up the card to Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo, unfortunately, because I don't like Henry Cejudo, and I am a fan of Peyton Talbot. I think he's very exciting. He's very, very fun to watch. He's got a sick style. His scrambles are really fun. He's also got that style where he just walks you down and just puts mean shots on you, puts you away. He's very fun to watch, but I unfortunately think he's going to lose this fight. I think this is a little bit too much too soon for him. I think Henry Cejudo, we know the wrestling pedigree that he has. Gold medal in the Olympics in wrestling. And Peyton Talbot, I think he has his stance. I think it leaves him very open to be taken down. He stands very upright, and he tends to keep his hands up pretty high. He doesn't really drop his hands to get those underhooks. I think he's going to have a really hard time if Cejudo does go to the grappling. Now, that's where I say if, because Cejudo he doesn't rely on his offensive grappling too much. He's typically, his wrestling prowess shows when it's defensive wrestling situations where he's defending a takedown or he's fighting out of situations. So I don't think he goes to his offensive wrestling a whole lot. But I think in this fight, if he starts to feel himself get into a little bit of trouble on the feet, I think if Talbot starts landing some big shots, which he is very powerful, so there's a chance that happens, I think Cejudo will turn to the wrestling. And I think that's where he has a big advantage. I mean, we're talking about just earlier this year, the same calendar year, Peyton Talbot, he got taken down and controlled for the majority of the fight by Raoni Barcelos. I think Cejudo is a much better wrestler than Raoni Barcelos. I don't think there's much question about that. And I don't think Cejudo's a schmuck on the feet either. I think people are really underestimating him on the feet. I mean, he's very fast. I think he has a speed advantage over Peyton Talbot. Of course, he was a 125er for a long time, so lighter man's skill. I think Cejudo has a speed advantage on the feet against Peyton Talbot. he's also, he's got a little bit of power. He can crack. People don't want to admit it, but he can land some big shots. He is capable of that. He's done it in his career before, and yeah, he had a close fight with Song Yadong. I know there was the eye poke controversy where they carried it on into round 4, so it would go to a decision. But honestly, when I was watching that fight, I kept seeing at the little screen at the bottom where they'd show people's tweets saying that they thought, that they thought Song Yadong was up. He was up 1-0 in the first round. He was up 2-0. He was up 3-0. I didn't see that. I thought it was very competitive. I thought Cejudo arguably won a round or two of that fight. I think he was looking really crisp on the feet against Song Yadong. And I don't think Peyton Talbot's quite at that level yet of Song Yadong. I don't think he is. So if Henry Cejudo can keep it close with him and have a lot of moments of success, I think he can find his own success on the feet against Peyton Talbot. I don't think he's going to be live to get a knockdown or knockout or anything. I don't think that's too likely, but I think he'll win a close decision. I think Henry Cejudo will get it done. I think the experience will play a big role in this, and I think that grappling differential, that'll be huge. So if Raoni Barcelos just 10 months ago was able to hold you down, it's hard to imagine Henry Cejudo can't. So give me Cejudo getting this one by decision. Pretty sizable underdog. He's like plus 250 on most sports books, which is crazy to me. I think, I'm not telling you what to do with your money, but I think if you're a betting man, you should be all over that. I think that's really good odds for Henry Cejudo. So give me Cejudo getting this one done by decision. Moving on. Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. I'm going to go with Taira. I'm going to go with Taira getting this one done. Obviously, he has the grappling advantage in this fight. He is a whiz on the ground. He's very good at getting takedowns and getting to the back. He's also good at, once he gets you down, controlling you. He'll manipulate those arms. He'll kind of get like a half Nelson and wrench that arm so he keeps you where he wants you. He's really, really good on the ground. He is dominant there. And he had a lot of success against Brandon Royval. I know he did lose that fight pretty clearly. There's 3 rounds that clearly went to Royval, but there was 2 rounds that went to Taira, and he was dominant in the grappling in those rounds. If he went out there and he won round 5, he wins that fight over Brandon Royval, and he already has a title shot by now. So I think, although he lost, I think that was a very impressive performance, and I think he showed in that fight that he has the makings of a future champ. And I think he's going to get through Brandon Moreno. I think he's going to do it. His stand up, it looked improved against Hyung Sung Park, but I'm not putting a ton of stock into that fight because I don't think Hyung Sung Park is very good. I saw Park. I picked Bruno Silva as the underdog over Hyung Sung Park in his last fight, and I'm proud of that because he was a pretty big underdog. I've never rated Hyung Sung Park. He had a decently competitive fight with Shannon Ross, and if you're doing that, you suck. So I don't really care much about the Hyun Sung Park fight. I'm more basing this off of what I've seen from Taira in the past. And that fight with Brandon Royval was impressive enough where I think at this stage in his career, I think he can beat Brandon Moreno. I think Brandon Moreno has looked worse in his last couple of fights. He did beat Severseg very clearly. He beat Albazi very clearly, but I don't think either of those guys are as good as Tatsuro Taira. I think Taira is really, really good. We look back at Brandon Moreno's fight with Pantoja, the champ. You look at how he lost that fight, and it was because he was getting controlled for a lot of that fight. He was giving up his back and getting controlled. Pantoja had dominant position for a lot of that fight, and he won that decision because of it. It was a pretty close fight, but the grappling was the big differential. And I think obviously Pantoja is elite of the elite when it comes to grappling, but I think Taira is not far behind him. I think his back takes are extremely good. I think his ability to control you when he gets you in good positions, or good positions for him, I think that's elite as well. I ultimately think that's going to be the big difference maker in this fight. I think Taira is just going to be too dominant in the grappling. I think it'll be somewhat competitive on the feet, but I lean towards Moreno. Obviously, he's got really good boxing. He does a good job with his kicks, which Taira's been susceptible to in his career. But I don't think, Moreno doesn't have that finishing potential where he's going to put Taira out. So I don't worry too much about that on the feet for Tatsuro Taira. And I think as this fight goes on, I think there'll be more and more grappling exchanges where I think Taira will very clearly win. It's possible that he gets a submission. We've seen Brandon Moreno. I believe he's been submitted before, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say he got subbed by Figgy. Am I wrong? No, I know he subbed Figgy. I don't know. Forget it. Whatever. Taira's going to do better in the grappling than Brandon Moreno will. I'm very confident in that. And I got him winning a decision, 29-28. Maybe Brandon Moreno has some success on the feet in one round, but yeah, I mean, if you're able to have, I think Brandon Royval is better at this point in time than Brandon Moreno is, and if he's able to have that much success, especially against a much lankier opponent in Brandon Royval, it's a lot harder to control someone like that and keep them in dominant positions. They have those long legs and that big frame where they're able to build back up. Brandon Moreno doesn't have that, so I think Taira's going to have an easier time controlling him than he did against Brandon Royval. So give me Taira winning this one decision off grappling control, and maybe he has a little bit of success on the feet, but I think the grappling differential is going to be too much. Moving on to the co-main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van. This is a sick fight. But and I love Joshua Van. I do, but I'm gonna have to go with Pantoja. And I love Pantoja too. He's a sick fighter. He's very, very fun to watch. I think, you look at these guys' career. Pantoja was fighting the best of the best at flyweight. He was fighting killers. He was fighting a murderer's row at flyweight before Joshua Van even started his pro career. I mean, this is a crazy differential in experience. Now Joshua Van, he's got great boxing. We know he has the advantage on the feet in this fight. And he's got good takedown defense too. We saw it against Ray Cerrutia. He's got very, very good takedown defense. However, I don't think it's good enough for someone like Pantoja. I don't think Cerrutia is on the level that Pantoja is. He's nowhere near it, in fact. And he also doesn't have the ability to, go to second options. With Ray Cerrutia, he kept shooting for double legs and single legs in that fight, and he wasn't getting them. All of his shots were getting sprawled. Pantoja, he has the ability to, if a takedown fails, all right, he can work to the back and he can get control from there. He can drag you down from a body lock. I mean, he's so dynamic in getting people down to the ground. And we know that once Pantoja gets you down to the ground, it is trouble. So I'm going to go with Pantoja winning this one by round 2 sub. I think this is going to be a lot for Joshua Van. I think this is just, he's a young guy. This is a huge stage early in his career against the second best, maybe even the best flyweight of all time. This is a really, really tough fight. And I think maybe he has some success early. Maybe he catches Pantoja with some counter shots. I don't think he has the power to put him away with one shot, so I'm not basing that prediction off his ability to land counter shots. I think those shots are going to be there, but I don't think it's going to be enough to put him away. And I think Pantoja is going to build into this fight. He's going to keep getting closer. He's going to work his way down to the ground, and I think once he gets there, I think he's going to sub Joshua Van. Give me Pantoja getting this one done by a round 2 submission. I know, Steve Erceg, he's got great boxing. And people will look at that fight and say, oh, he was able to keep catching Pantoja coming in with the counter shots, and he was able to arguably win that fight. But Erceg has elite grappling. He's got very, very good scrambles, good defensive grappling. He doesn't put himself in positions to be subbed. I think Joshua Van is nowhere near that level of defensive grappling that Steve Erceg is. And I think if this fight does hit the mat, I think Pantoja is going to be in a really good position to get a submission, and I think he's going to get it done. So maybe there's a little bit of moments of success early for Joshua Van in round 1, but I think Pantoja, I think once he gets to the mat, I think he's going to win this one by submission. I also think another thing that's going to be effective for him too, before I move on to the next one, Joshua Van is a boxer. He has that boxing heavy style, and Alexandre Pantoja, he loves ending his combinations, those rushing shots. He loves ending them with kicks. And I think once he starts slamming those low kicks against Joshua Van, who's going to be moving backwards a lot, I think that's going to limit his movement, and I think that's going to favor Pantoja a lot. I think he's going to build off that. I think he's going to limit Joshua Van's movement and get takedowns from there. And once he gets it down to the mat, I think, maybe Joshua Van survives for a little bit. Maybe he fights off some submission attempts, but I think Pantoja is eventually going to find it. Give me a round 2 rear naked choke. Moving on to the main event, Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan. He can't not pick Merab. I mean, not even just off the first fight between these two where Merab won that fight 50-45 very clearly. Just looking at Merab at this stage in his career in the last few fights he's had, he looks unbeatable. I don't see anyone at bantamweight right now beating him. He seems like an unstoppable force. And Petr Yan's very good. I think he's a top 3 bantamweight in the division. But I just don't see him get this one done. Even going into this fight this time around healthy. I know last fight he says he has had an arm injury or like a shoulder injury, so he couldn't really throw his right hand, I want to say. So I understand that, and I think this fight maybe it'll be a little bit more competitive. It's hard for it not to be more competitive. I mean, the first fight was such a domination that I can't imagine it not being a little bit more competitive. So yeah, I think style-wise, I think this is a nightmare for Petr Yan. He likes to build into fights. He likes to make reads and slowly heat up as the fight goes on. I don't think Merab's style allows for that. I mean, he's so heavy on the pressure that he's not going to allow Petr Yan the chance to make those reads and to build into the fight like he likes to do. He's going to be on that pressure early. Petr Yan also keeps a really high guard, and that's going to be trouble for him trying to defend takedowns against Merab Dvalishvili. So unless he wants to change up the approach and completely change how he's fought his entire career with that really high shelled up guard, he's going to be susceptible to takedowns again in this fight. So I think Merab's going to have a very easy time getting him down to the mat. Petr Yan's got great takedown defense, so maybe he defends some of the takedowns. We saw it in the first fight. They say that Merab, he broke the record for most takedown attempts in a single fight, but I don't think that's a stat that really is a good thing for Merab. I think that more speaks to the takedown defense of Petr Yan. So I think there's going to be some moments where he defends the takedown, but I just think the pressure from Merab is going to be too relentless. It's going to be too much for Yan. He's not going to get a chance to build into the fight and make his reads. And I'm going to go Merab winning this one. We'll go 49-46. Maybe there's a round where Merab tests the striking and Petr Yan obviously gets the better of that because Petr Yan is amongst the elite strikers of the sport. Another thing too, he doesn't have that one-shot power to really put Merab's lights out. I think it's going to take someone beating him. It's going to take them having that one-shot power. I thought O'Malley might be the guy to be able to just find that chin and put him out with one shot, but even he wasn't capable of doing that. And I don't think Yan has anywhere near the power that Sean O'Malley does. So it's just a really, really, really bad style matchup for Yan. I don't see him winning this. I think they could run this fight 10 times, and maybe he wins one if I'm being generous. So give me Merab Dvalishvili winning this one, 49-46 decision, pretty clear stuff. I think he's going to get a lot of takedowns. I think Jan's going to get back up. He's going to defend some of them, but that pressure is going to be too much. And Merab's going to keep getting to him. Maybe he even hurts him on the feet here and there because he gets so worried about the takedown. But yeah, I have a hard time seeing this not be a dominant win for Merab Dvalishvili. So I'm rooting for Petr Yan, but I'm picking Merab. That's all I got for this card. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you watching this far. If you don't mind, drop a like, maybe subscribe. That would be much appreciated. And I will be back Saturday night to recap this event. See ya.